Welcome to Into the Words, a podcast from the Highlights Foundation Retreat Center. Today in the cabin are our dear friends, Kelly Light and Steve Light. Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
George.
How's it going?
Great. Thanks for joining us. Kelly, welcome. Please, will you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. I am Kelly Light. I'm author and illustrator of picture books. I have a series starring a little girl named Louise who loves art, published by Balzer and Bray, an imprint of HarperCollins.
I'm Steve Light. I write and illustrate children's books also. Some of my most popular ones are Have You Seen My Dragon and Have You Seen My Monster? And my newest board book, Blackbird, Yellow Sun, and Mama Tiger, Tiger Cub.
Great. Thank you. Now, just to get this part out of the way, you have the same last name.
Yep, we sure do. Spelt the same and everything.
Yep.
But
no relation.
we are not
no
related.
relation. No.
But I do call her my faux sis
Yes.
because she feels like my sister to me, from my sister from another mother or whatever
Right,
people say. We have so much in common.
Yes.
From illustration to drawing to growing up in New Jersey and our experiences growing up in New Jersey, that sometimes it's a little scary.
Yeah, I always like to say that one of the best byproducts of coming into the children's book industry is the people that you meet along the way. And sometimes you're really lucky and you meet somebody and you make a real connection and a real friend. So that's the greatest thing.
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
So this is neat. So it's not like the Highlights Foundation is the first time the two of you are meeting. You've known each other and
for a while
interacted.
now.
For a while. Yeah.
It's the first time that I've had, I've always had a few people. I have my wife as a sounding board, but I really respect Kelly's artwork and her she has the same ideas about illustration and children's books. And so I actually get to show her sketches and ideas, and her feedback really means a lot to me. So I feel really blessed to have her in my life that way.
Yes, and I must say I have learned so much from knowing Steve, because Steve is truly an artist, and it lives and breathes it, and reminds me constantly that not only is it a privilege what we do for a living, it's a privilege to make books for kids, but it's also almost like you owe it to yourself to continually refuel and rebuild the passion for making art.
So how does, I hear a lot from the authors who talk about sharing their manuscripts, sharing drafts with critique partners, etc. How does that work in the illustration world? Are you like sharing sketches back and forth, or is it more?
I'm showing her sketchbooks and just saying, I'm thinking this is going to happen. I showed her some finished art and asked her, does that pose look right? To me, it seems a little off, but sometimes your own artist eye, you're seeing other things that most people aren't going to pick up. So I wasn't sure if it was just me being so in it that I couldn't see out of it. And so it was nice to have that feedback. Yeah, I think maybe his shoulder is a little too high or something, and that's why it looks a little awkward. It was nice to get that.
And even to, sometimes we work in such solitude, and we might have like the spark of an idea, and we're like, I don't know, like, is that really something that's even viable? We'll even say like, I have this idea and it's not fully formed yet, but it's just about this. And it'd be like, either like, yeah, absolutely, that's something we should totally pursue, or
one of us will say something else, like the thought that first comes to our mind when we say that thing, and then that'll either help that person or change their direction or help them, or it's really nice.
Bouncing off of each other.
Yeah.
So Kelly, you gave a talk on what night was that to start the illustration intensive? Thursday night, I believe.
Night, yes.
Can you tell us just a little bit? You told us some about yourself, and you gave us
I gave a little brief version of like my journey. When I think almost everybody kind of starts out as, here's a picture of me when I was a kid, because so many of us literally have not put down our crayons, so we almost all start off with like, just so you know, we've always been doing this. We've always been drawing, or we've always been writing stories, and we just never stop. So there's that part of the presentation. But for me, coming here for the illustration intensive, I wanted to say, focus on your drawing. And so I gave everybody an assignment. is I want everybody to think about having the strongest foundation, which is the drawing and the creating, and then you can go off from there. We just did printing with you.
I did printing.
But still it starts with your sketches and your sketchbook.
And we tell them that an illustrator is constantly drawing. It's really about that drawing and thinking through your hand and getting a shorthand and getting a dictionary of ways to draw things and convey, so you can tell that story with the pictures.
And I always like to give people who want to break into children's book illustration the idea that if you do all of that background work, when you finally sit down, which is what we just witnessed with you printing, when you finally sit down to make the art, you're free. You've done all the research, you've done all that foundation work, and then when you really make it, you put that aside, and then because all the knowledge is up in your noggin.
Right, and then you're just pure joy of creating this book.
And I think you showed that as you talked about building a character and thinking about that character and all of the different sketches that go into it, even when they may not be on the page.
Right, they don't wind up in the book, but you then, I call it acting, right? You're acting with your pencil. So if you've done all that, when it comes time to actually do your finished spread, your sketch for your finished spread, you then just know how that character is.
I have to tell you this, it'll make you happy, because you gave an assignment to design a slug. I had my group all lay on the rug like slugs so that they could feel what it felt like to be a slug. And I made them pose like their other characters too, because I said, you need to. So I stood up and I'm doing their character. I'm like, no, you need to stand up. You need to feel how it feels to hold that piece of cheese or whatever you're drawing.
Right. It makes you understand it. And the thing is that I like to also say to people, like, you don't have to be perfect. Like, you don't have to be drawing the most perfectly accurate anatomy, but if your drawing has the feeling of it, it will translate.
If you believe it and you're thinking like that character and you're in that moment.
And it can be stylized and it can be changed, it can be altered, but something in your drawing has that feeling of, holding a piece of cheese. Or,
because some things that you love art-wise are not painted or drawn that well, but they have that love in it. My teacher, Dave Pastelacqua, talked about, he judged this art show, and it was this very prestigious art show, but anyone could enter. And there was this one painting of a bird bath, and it was painted by this old lady, but she had such a story about it that her husband had given to her. He had passed away, so she decided to paint, and that came through. And all these professional artists didn't shine as brightly as this woman because she painted that bird bath with such love.
And Steve showed in his presentation today, he showed an image which was drawn by a great fine artist named Ben Sean. And it's a line drawing of a bunch of shopping carts. And you said, well, look at that. It's an amazing drawing.
I'm obsessed with that drawing.
And each shopping cart is drawn differently, right? Even though shopping carts are all exactly the same, they fit together sometimes when you're at the supermarket, right? When you have to put them back. But the idea of that drawing to me is when you look at it, you can hear them.
Yeah.
You can see them. You can see how somebody didn't put them back accurately. Like, it's a line of shopping carts that you can almost, like, I'm experiencing it,
And who draws shopping carts with such life and like a whole story behind it? We don't know the story, because I don't know what he drew it for, but like, there's a story there, and it just pulls you in, because he must have been thinking about something when he drew that, and it has all that behind it,
And I think that one of the things I said when I gave my presentation on Thursday night was the difference between a drawing and an illustration. Because you can do an awesome drawing. You could do an absolutely glorious drawing of anything, a tree, a flower, a chair, But the difference between that and an illustration is it's telling you something. It's telling you a story, or it's making you ask a question. And it's making you want to know what's next.
Right. Illustration, to illuminate, is to shine light on something, to make something make sense. It has to be telling that story. And so many times you'll illustrate something and it's this great illustration, but it doesn't work to tell the story or work in the book. And you have to have that, to say, okay, I'm gonna move on. I'm not gonna use it because it's not right for that. It's a great it's a great drawing, great piece of art, but it's not a good illustration because it doesn't illustrate what you need it to say. It doesn't tell that story.
So so review quickly the assignment and then tell me how are people reacting to
So the
having done
assignment
this?
was just to give them an assignment to design characters, to give each character its own distinct personality, to do 3 poses of each character, and then put them into a scene together where they have to interact. So I gave them the setting, which was a diner. They can decide, however, if they're in a booth or on a stool, one's a waitress. They can decide. They can make those choices. So I said, just to narrow it down, I said you have a slug and you have a mouse, and there go from there.
In a diner.
In a diner, and you populate the rest of the diner if you want to, or it's just the 2 of them. And I was pleasantly surprised by the level of excitement. That the attendees. They have been working. I'm excited to see them tomorrow morning.
I found a lot of them. We get so caught up in making a good drawing, and so and Kelly was showing that you don't want to sit down and do the one drawing of the mouse and then paint it, and you want to do all these drawings very loose and sketch and draw and feel it and come up with different things, and we taught them what tracing paper is. Very surprised, but they didn't know that you can just lay a piece of tracing paper on top of a drawing and see it underneath and use the parts that you like and change other parts, and then so that was very interesting to me to work to try to get them to just sketch and feel it out and not just go. I said, I know you know how to paint that really well, but that's not what it's about right now, because you haven't decided what the character really is yet.
Right. So the second half of it is tomorrow morning. We have another session. So using the projector, the digital projector, we're going to put people's sketches underneath it, and then I will, if they want me to, put tracing paper over them. And I will kind of, help them and say, okay, this is great, but you could think about this, or you could think about that, or maybe you could, So that's what my session is going to be like. We're going to go over what everybody drew. And then I'm also going to offer tonight, I'm going to say, and if you have any of your own characters and you're having trouble imbuing them with a little bit of life, then bring them, and we'll do that. We'll do that too tomorrow.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And Steve, did you do some printmaking this afternoon?
I did. So Blackbird, Yellow Sun, and Mama Tiger, Tiger Cub, and I actually showed them proofs for Up Cat, Down Cat. Those 3 board books are printed, and I came up with a really simple method of just cutting cardboard with these heavy utility shears, cutting the cardboards into shapes and using printing ink and printing the shapes. So it kept it really graphic. So I showed them we did a few trees and a little background, and I showed them tracing paper and also gluing down. The Blackbird is black cut paper, so to glue that down, I used something called the artist tack, which was very interesting that no one knew what that was. Instead of glue stick. Glue stick's very messy. So we did some printing, and then I showed them how I print something, and I cut out some trees and we printed them, and then let them go, and they're all in there printing right now and doing some great stuff. Actually, a brayer is a very interesting tool and can give some really. It's like a roller. It's like a rubber roller that you roll the printing ink on, but you can just roll ink onto the paper, and it gives a lot of different textures, and a lot of people are playing with that. So it's really nice, and it's nice and messy.
And so printmaking to me has always been the scary project and the effort. And when you started talking about doing it on cardboard, I was like, wow.
Yeah,
just simplified it.
I went to school with a lot of printmakers, and wow, they were really intense, trying to get this perfect print. And so I never got into that and everything, and I'm always doing things outside the box, kind of, just my own way, and I just liked the graphic quality of it, and it was quick, and simple, and I wanted that book to be just these bold, simple shapes. So to be able to just cut out the shape, put ink on it, and print it, it's like a big stamp, really, and then walk away, gave it that freshness that it needed.
So how would either of you describe this illustration intensive workshop? Say you met someone on the street who says, I want to take an illustration workshop. How would you describe this one to them?
I think that it demystifies a lot of, I think that people who would like to. A lot of people that came are people who maybe this is their first step. And then there's a few people who are further along in their journey. But I think a lot of people come in with a lot of questions and a lot of feelings of being overwhelmed by it. And I think that by getting to spend time with 4 different people who are illustrators and also happen to be authors, and then we have 2 art directors as well. But the time with the illustrators, I think, is demystifying all of the should haves. People come in thinking there's so many, well, I have to do it this way. And well, my portfolio should look like this. And I'm not ready to do this yet because I haven't done XYZ. And I think by seeing 4 different, illustrators, they realize there isn't any one way. There isn't any one way to break in. There isn't any one way to make art. There isn't any one way to approach this, to experience it. And it's the finding the you, finding the way that it is you that you're bringing, to the table.
And the great thing about here at Highlights, and you said sometimes they're overwhelmed, you come here and you can leave everything else behind. You have a great little cabin to stay in. They feed you. You can just concentrate on figuring out who you are in the illustration world and what you want to create.
Right. And it's also, I think, the one thing, because this is your family and this is the family atmosphere that you've made is in breaking bread with each other, right? So we all have our meals together and we all so by the second meal, the first meal, everybody's a little bit quiet.
Right.
But by the second meal that we have together, you can hear the level of just the volume of talk.
Yeah, this last lunch,
up,
all 3 tables happened to laugh at the same time at separate things. And it was so loud and wonderful. And we were all just like, oh my gosh, everyone's so happy.
So that's
you
part
feel
of it.
that
Yeah.
collective energy.
Right.
And it seems like in talking to Merrill, he said there was a great groove going on last night. Like there's a lot of people after dinner working, and whether it's on the patio by the fire, whether it's in the classroom area.
Yeah.
But there's this informal time where people are still
right, and
working.
We're there while the other illustrators are talking and while they're doing other things. And I think it makes us very approachable to them too, to come and talk to us and get what they really need.
Yeah, and I think they also, it's almost like, when you're doing this, there's this greater continuum of they talk to us and maybe when they first meet us, they're a little starry-eyed because, you're published and you have these books and, but then they hear our stories, whether in our presentation or whether when we're sitting chit-chatting with them, and they realize whatever bumps along the way we had and that there were people that we were like, when I met this one or when I got to see, they realize there's just this continuum of again, like if you just put your head down and do the work and you get in the flow and
be true to yourself.
That
what
it's
you love, other people will love.
Yeah, you just got to stick to it.
So Kelly, what are you working on next?
I'm working on a picture book, which as you know, I was here last fall working on. I'm still working on it. So it is called the Smiley Family Album and is a found family album. So when the reader picks it up, they should feel like they found it, and the turning the pages is the discovery of this very quirky family called the Smiley Family. And so I'm still working on it.
It's awesome.
It's awesome, buddy.
And that was a real treat for us because you brought your car full of research to the Highlights Foundation. You set up in the art coop for a number of days, and you had all the relics and I think it was like an old camera you had, and you had the photographs, and you hung them up, but you built your studio of research around you to be able to start in on that.
Yeah, and it was great. Those 9 days were a good, deep dive into.
We have that in common that we
like
to really dive into these worlds that we're creating and surround ourselves with those things and think about them. And I think for me, it's like a relief to sometimes get away from the real world and think about the book world that I'm working on. It kind of gives me a escape.
Just will you tell us briefly your big machine story?
My big machine story.
You mentioned going to do research.
Oh, for Builders and Breakers?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So you have to research these books. It's very important. And so my book, Builders and Breakers, was all about construction equipment, and I really love construction equipment and machines. And so there's a place, Diggerland USA in New Jersey, and they have an adult section, and adults can go and they'll teach you how to drive an excavator or a steamroller or I believe a bulldozer. I did the excavator. I dug a hole. I put a telephone pole in it. I filled it back up. I threaded a giant tire onto the telephone pole. And I learned how to drive one of them. The last thing was to put a basketball on a orange construction cone. I got really close a few times, but then it was getting really hot in the cabin, and it was like I was in there for like an hour.
Is it like all of those things? It's all of those pulleys?
It's your feet and your arms and which way. And that was the hardest thing. I think if I had a diagram on the window, a visual, so that I could just remember which direction to go to move things, I would get it even quicker. I kept doing it the wrong way, either forward or backward to move the arm up or down. Like I kept doing it the wrong way, to get it. But so much fun.
It makes sense to me because when then you're drawing them and you're just like it's all in your head.
And I'm feeling that machine that I was, all that stuff. It's like
cool.
So. And the book I'm working on right now is called Whiskers Hollow, The Road Trip, and it's all animals in a forest kind of world that I'm creating where they drive cars on the tree branches. So we actually got to go to the Lake District in the UK where Beatrix Potter's house is and Hilltop and everything, and visit her house and live in a little cottage and go and paint trees every day. Thanks to Kelly, actually, because she went before us and told us all the good places. She's like, you have to go for this book. And we did, and it was fantastic. It was one of the best trips, and I painted every day, and it was just great. And I came back and started working on the book, and I finished the halfway mark page right before I came here. So as soon as I get back, I'll start on the rest of the book.
So you painted while you were there in the Lakes District?
Yeah, I have a little watercolor set that I brought, and I actually have a little kit that I made. I think I have a picture on my Instagram. And I carried that around with me with my sketchbook, and we would just sit places and paint.
But were you painting art for the book, or you were painting?
I was painting like
ideas,
inspiring art for the book. So I was just painting trees sometimes because there's a lot of trees in the book.
Awesome trees and
then sometimes back in the cottage, I would start illustrating the trees with the little windows in them and the cars driving on the trees. Oh, that one I painted today is perfect for this, kind of thing, and just kind of soaking it all in and getting.
It sounds like what you're talking about, where you do the pre-work.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like if you've ever were big Disney fans, and like the Mary Blair paintings. She was a famous artist that worked for Disney. Her paintings were mostly, Disney would just say, "I want to do Cinderella." This is the story, kind of, he would and then she would paint what she thought the castle looked like or what Alice looked like in Wonderland at the tea party and stuff. And I do a lot of that because that's my favorite part of developing a book. Just, maybe it looks this way. Maybe it looks that way. Maybe it's this kind of truck. Maybe it's that kind of digger. Maybe it's that, and that's
it's visual exploration.
Yeah.
So
and trying out different styles or different colors and different textures and things that I want to happen in the book. And that allows me to be the artist that I want without all the pressure of, okay, what's going to happen on this page? What's going to happen on this page? I eventually get there, but I really enjoy the part where I'm just exploring. It could be the possibilities are endless, and I love that. And so that I really make sure I allow myself enough time to do that with every book. So fun. Yeah.
For my family photo album book, I went to Kodak in Rochester for 4 days, and I did research because I not only want to have it be a photo album, but I want there to be a little undercurrent of photography, right? And the idea that not only were these photo albums like family treasure, but actually, today we take our pictures on our phones and we never make prints, and this is treasure. Not only this is also a really important part of American history, photography. So to spend 4 days in the archives of Kodak was
did some great stuff there.
It was great. Yeah. So.
Oh, the fun part.
Yeah, it's good fun.
We get to do the greatest thing, and I said it, it's work, but it's fun. You know what I mean? And when it starts to not be fun and really just feel like work, you're doing something. You got to figure out what's going on to make it fun again.
And I said today when we did our little breakout with we have our mentees. I said, the most important part of this whole entire process is if you put your heart on the page, then that's what's going to directly reach the kids. And that's if you throw your whole self into making a book, it will come out to the reader. In the end result.
And so I was talking to Mallory and Jen a little bit from the art director perspective, and Jen pointed out, she said, when we're reviewing a portfolio, that's what we're looking for, is the one that feels fun, or the one that the artist will say, this is one I'm enjoying, and then she'll kind of push on them with that one and talk about, let's bring that fun out, because if you're not having fun with that, how are you going to do 40 pages of it?
Right, exactly. Well, and it's a few years. Yeah, it's a lot of years to develop a book. So you really have to love and want to be married to that idea for, however long you're going to be working on the book. It varies, but it's at least 2 years. I don't know any book that's quicker than that. So, so it's a long time you really have to pick something. You can't just pick something that you think because people want, you'll get it published kind of thing, because your heart's not going to be in that. You got to pick something that you really care about, that, you want to be with for that long,
Well, thank you both, Kelly and Steve, for joining us on Into the Words here at the Highlights Foundation Retreat Center. We are dedicated to continuing our 35-year history of providing the space, the conversations, and the nurturing that goes into making great stories for children. So thank you for being a part of that with us here at the Highlights Foundation.
Honored to be a part of it.
Thank you. And thank you especially for all that you do to support that belief that children are the world's most important people.